All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Glad you guys could all make it here to spend some time with us today. So really appreciate taking a little bit of time out of your day, and we're hoping to make a big impact on that day. I want to introduce myself. My name is Alex Jones. I manage the digital sales team for Infor Healthcare. Like I said, very happy you guys could take. The attendance is fantastic, and we're so happy to have it today. I've met some of you, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone I haven't met very soon. But the reason we put this together, we want to put something that was truly impactful to our healthcare customers, right? So I do hope you find the next hour extremely helpful. Before we begin, I want to introduce the members of the Infor team speaking today. First, we have Sandy Lang, Senior Account Manager for the Infor Healthcare team. Many of you know her very well. Next, we have Debbie Chancellor, our wonderful solution director for the Infor Document Management product. Deb is here to help answer any questions that you might have. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Sandy to get us started. Sandy?
All right, awesome. Thank you, Alex. And again, welcome and thank you for joining our webinar this morning or afternoon, wherever you are located, with our premier partner, Ephesoft. The reason why we've set this up, as Alex mentioned, is because we do have Ephesoft as our premier partner based on the long-standing relationship that we've had over the last 5 or 6 years and the technology that they bring to our customers that have these specific AP challenges and also specific to healthcare. Ephesoft are leaders in the OCR and data extraction categories. They have the highest user adoption rates, and they're also our easiest to do business with partner, as we've learned over the last 5 to 6 years of doing business with them. So again, thank you for joining. And just a couple of quick notes before I kick it over to Eric. This session will be recorded, so we'll get that recording sent out after we wrap up at the end of the day here. And then we are also asking for all participants to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will hold questions until the end when we kind of have an open format for addressing those questions and or providing follow-up again with answers after the session ends. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Eric.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Eastman. I am the OEM Partner Manager here at Ephesoft. My focus is around Infor. With me today is John Endell, Senior Engineer for Ephesoft, and he'll be showing the demonstration once I get through my PowerPoint presentation. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. We're here to focus on the challenges around data processing within healthcare. And we're going to put a focus on accounts payable. It's our #1 space where we solve a problem for document management, but we'll go beyond that in just a few minutes. We thought we'd focus on 4 key challenges and maybe speak to a couple of additional ones. One is the inefficiency and the expense around processing AP documents. Statistically, we're looking at over 11 days and almost $11 to handle every single invoice. If you take and you multiply out by the number of invoices you process within accounts payable, that is a staggering number. Add to that exception rates in terms of having issues with processing documents. Again, statistically, they say less than 20% of invoices are processed straight through the system due to non-PO documents, due to approval processes and delays. It makes it very, very difficult to have documents or invoices processed automatically. Believe it or not, in today's day and age, we're still processing paper documents. I would say that within healthcare, saying that we have 40% of vendors sending paper documents is probably on the high side. However, I would add that just because we get a document electronically doesn't mean it stays electronic. Oftentimes the invoices are printed simply to key the information into the system, or they're printed to circulate for approval. And the goal is to change that mindset and that process to make make your processing of AP documents more efficient. And then lastly, we're going to focus on, I called it questions. 25% of time is spent dealing with vendor inquiries, and a lot of that is due to processing issues or delays or lost invoices. And these are all things that we can speak to benefiting by having a more efficient accounts payable process. Some additional things I just kind of noted, additional challenges: missed payments, duplicate payments, that's no fun. Lost or missing invoices, again, horrible. Going back to the vendor, hey, can you resend that? And then the amount of labor it takes to deal with everything we've just mentioned. So let's start solving that problem. How can we do that? The solution is to take those documents and try to automate the processing of that information. We call it your hyper automation journey, where we can take those files that come into your organization, whether they be electronic via email, whether they be paper documents that are scanned, however they come into your organization, and feed them into a solution that we call IDM Capture. IDM Capture provides an AI-based ability to read the information off of those documents, process them into IDM for then further processing and attachment into your accounting system. We can accelerate your ability to process documents by over 80%, sometimes much higher than that, which makes for more efficient processing of your accounts payable invoices. So today, if you have an Infor OS application, you're suited for IDM Capture. If you're looking to migrate to an OS-based application or CloudSuite, you will again be suited for this application and be poised to really be able to take advantage of better processing of not only your accounts payable invoices, but additional document types as well. What is the inevitable result of automating this process? Reduce processing times, and I'll cover some statistics in just a moment, but making the processing of your documents much quicker, reducing what we call fat finger errors or typing inconsistencies with documents where mistakes happen and then they have to go back and be corrected, and then being able to take the document not only within invoices, but other document types, and we call it enabling that content or leveraging that information for a particular business purpose. And then again, when we're talking about additional document types, we're talking about the scalability of the system to be broadened within the organization. If you have a process in place today where you're getting a document and it's manually acted upon to glean information off of that document, IDM Capture can help you improve that process. What are the results? The results are taking costs and time and reducing them significantly. That $10.95 cost per invoice goes down to $2.25, or that nearly 12-day process goes down to just 3 days, putting you in a position to where you could maybe take advantage of discounts, let alone avoiding paying late fees for invoices. And I speak to all of these things because we're talking about the return on investment within the solution. It pays for itself very, very easily. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but to get into specifics, let's go beyond accounts payable. Things like patient records that are at least partially handled in physical documents today, billing, labs, prescriptions, any information that's managed by the hospital that again is processed manually. The statistics are being able to cut the time of managing those documents down by 50%, therefore reducing the cost by 50%. A staggering piece of information is there was an analysis done recently where over 5 years, an institution saved in excess of $4.5 million by implementing an AI-based document processing system. And here I'm just going to cover how this all comes together before I turn it over to John for an actual demonstration. So to get a view or a vision of how this all works, just imagine anything coming into the organization from a document perspective, whether that's sent to you via email, whether it physically came in and you scan it, it comes in via fax, maybe it's even a document on a mobile device. That document can be forwarded into IDM Capture, where IDM Capture takes a look at that document. It actually cleans it up. It can separate pages out so that if it's a PDF that has 100 different documents in it, it actually has intelligence into it that can separate those documents. And then it classifies them. It actually determines which document types are in that packet of information or in that email, for example. And then it associates those document types with particular information that we're looking for off of that document, and it extracts that information. In most cases, it passes that information directly into IDM for further, I'll say processing, or to again, put into a workflow, for example, if an approval is required, or to pass on to the accounting system. In some cases, some of that information is required to be validated. Let's say that it was a scanned document and there's literally a stain over the invoice number, for example, and it needs to be reviewed by a person. So this is where the software says, I'm not totally confident that I got all of the information right on this document. I just need to see somebody to take a look at it quickly, make the correction within the interface, and then boom, click a button and it's off. So you've got a process where many of your documents have gone straight through the system for your straight through processing. You've got a small percentage of documents that need a smaller percentage of information reviewed to where it's then processed. So if you're picturing however many people, whether it be 3 people, 10 people, 50 people within an organization that spend their life keying in information and checking the quality of that information, and now having the ability to automate that, you can just imagine the value of that to the organization. So with that, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Let's not thank you for your attendance. Please stay on the line because John is going to actually provide a demonstration for you right now.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric.
You bet, John.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to start off by really starting within Infor OS, probably a screen that most of you are familiar with. But really from here, what's nice about IDM Capture is we can embed this directly in the little menu switcher right up here. So I'm going to jump over to IDM Capture and really take you through a quick tour of this particular solution. So right now I'm going to drag a few invoices into the system. And now, as Eric just pointed out, this is one particular way of getting invoices or other documents in. We can just drag and drop, and then the system will take care of the rest. I would say most customers are leveraging something like an automated import, whether it's an email attachment or scanning to a monitor folder. The nice thing is you can choose any of those different ingestion points and use them all together, or just focus on one. So from here, what happens next is it's going to run through that series of workflow steps that Eric just had in his last slide. But what I want to do now is jump over to that particular validation step. So think of that as your human in the loop area. And that's really driven by a series of different things like confidence scores, confidence thresholds, validation patterns. So there's a number of ways that you can pause documents there, depending on whether or not they meet your criteria or your checks and balances that have been put in place. So let's go ahead and open up some documents here. All right, perfect. So here we have a batch of invoices. Now, within IDM Capture, a batch could be one invoice or it could be 100. It really just depends on how we're pulling these invoices or these other documents into the system. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we have about 7 different invoices that have all been separated and identified correctly by IDM Capture. The center column is going to contain any data fields that we're pulling off of these documents automatically. And then obviously we have a larger display on the right-hand side. Now we've got some different options on this vertical toolbar to make things a little bit easier, more efficient for the user validation process. One that I see a lot of people use is this little plug icon. So you can pop this out to a second monitor. So you'll have the image on one screen and then all of your indexing fields on the other one. You can also zoom in, zoom out. If I want to look at a particular area a little more closely, I can click on this binocular and then I can just highlight an area just to zoom in a little bit closer. But ultimately, again, what's going on with this particular part of the user interface, again, think of this as exception handling. So these documents have been paused here, and really what it's asking for is just some human intervention just to verify that anything that was flagged, either needs to be fixed or corrected. So we're using what I like to call a red light, green light system for this step. You may notice it might be a little bit hard to see through the webinar panel, but most of these invoices have a skinny green bar on the left-hand side. However, Doc 3 has this larger red bar. This is also the first document that's presented to us. So again, going back to efficiency, the users that are working in this screen, you don't need to look at every single document. It's really only those ones that have been flagged. So IDM Capture will bring you directly to that first problem document automatically. And then furthermore, we're also going to change the field color. So hopefully it was pretty evident that our invoice number was the field that was flagged. We can also configure some little messages just to give the user a little more indication as to why that happened. Now, in this case, if we look at our invoice, it's pretty obvious that we've got a water stain over the invoice number. So really the system wasn't able to read this, or if it was a very low confidence read. So this is where a user can just easily key in that invoice number, hit validate. And then what happens is it'll skip over any other valid documents in this particular batch. And then it brings us to the last one in this list. So again, this one was another invoice number that was not picked up. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, this is a pretty clean invoice. What's the issue here? So again, this system works off of rules. So, if the beauty is if a new vendor is onboarded or if you see an invoice from a new vendor, the rules that have already been in place most likely will cover everything that you're trying to extract. So in this particular example, just envision that Promo Prints is a new vendor. So this is the first time they're sending an invoice through the system. Now we can do things like do a vendor lookup or a supplier lookup, and that's where we're pulling the vendor name from in these blue fields. I could even search that if I wanted to. So I could just do a wildcard search and then search through my supplier or vendor list. We can also pull this directly from Infor databases as well. And then we are able to pick up the invoice date, the terms, the subtotal, and the amount without having to change any different rules or add any additional rules to the system. However, it did miss the invoice number. And if we look, this invoice number happens to be pretty far offset to the right from where the label is. And so that might have been enough just for it to miss that particular example. So here, what's really nice about this image is I can just click on that invoice number, and then IDM Capture will automatically pull whatever I click on. I could also lasso and kind of capture an entire chunk of data if I'd like to. And then the system can take this information of where I clicked on this and then pass that back to a supervised machine learning model and actually tell the system, hey, for Promo Prints, here's where the invoice number usually is. So it's going to build a rule set just by clicking on this image on the right-hand side. So from here, I'll validate. Once that's the last particular exception in this batch, you'll see a message just like you see here, just letting you know that everything is all set. And then the system will automatically queue up any other batches that are in line behind that. But what I want to do is jump over to an admin screen and show you what's going on. So this is the batch that we were just working on. And notice that the status is now switched to running. So this is now actually going through our export step. So again, going back to Eric's slide, that very last step is where we deliver the images and the data to IDM. And that's what you'll see here in a moment. All right, so that batch finished the export process. So now I can jump back over to Infor Document Management, and then we'll actually have these invoices loaded up right here. So here are brand new invoices that just came in, and let's start with this one. So here's that one with that water stain. So we do pass along the image, and then we map the fields that we are capturing within IDM Capture to the attributes tab here. Now, keep in mind, this is, of course, just a sampling of data. You can have as many fields defined here as you'd like, including line items if you're interested in trying to capture any line item detail that may occur as well. So again, this is really where IDM Capture performs that integration directly with IDM to intelligently and automatically capture and identify invoices and other documents, capture that data, and then pass it along right to IDM. Excellent. So with that, Eric, I'll pass it back over to you. Thanks.
Thank you much. Great job, John. That was a really good demo of IDM Capture. At this point, I'm looking up at the clock, and we're doing really good time-wise. So I'd love to see some questions come in on the chat or the Q&A section. Let me see if I see any. I have one question here. It says, does IDM Capture require IDM? And the answer is yes. Our integration is set up directly to go from a capture process and a validation process to where all of that information is tied together, and then it gets sent directly into IDM. That was a pretty easy one. How does it handle POs in matching is another question. Great question. John, I think you'll be better equipped to answer that. Why don't I ask you to jump in?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So in terms of handling purchase orders, those would be set up just as another document model, essentially. And so while they're very similar to invoices, you could even repurpose some of the rules that have been defined. So IDM Capture would be able to distinguish that this is a PO versus an invoice. Again, go through that same process. It may stop in that validation step if needed. Otherwise, it'll end up directly in IDM. And then from there, matching can be applied. And I'd actually like to toss this over to Debbie. She's much more intimate with that side of the house of once things reside in IDM and then that whole matching process downstream.
Yes, absolutely. So it takes on the native functionality of the Infor ERP system. So when it goes into document management, it'll be just like as if you key the invoice in manually. It has a PO on the invoice or on the scanned document when it comes in on the invoice. It goes into the system, finds that PO, to John's point, this file, and does the automatic matching just as if you were doing it straight from the Payable system. So it all takes on the native functionality, works with your approval process, your workflows, all in sync at the same time. So I hope that answers the question.
And feel free to type additional follow-up questions if anything is unclear on that. While we're waiting for that, if in fact that is the case, I have another question. How does pricing work for IDM Capture? IDM Capture is available directly through your Infor sales rep. And depending on the configuration of the system, the pricing can be got directly by your sales rep. What else? Can IDM Capture use more than AP? That might have come in before we got there. Absolutely. We'd like nothing more than to have a use case, even if it's a use case we've never heard of, and would be glad to put together a program to do additional document types.
Eric, on that point, I just want to also add that you don't need to specify, that these are invoices coming in, or you don't need to group invoices together and then other like documents together. You could send those all in a mix, even if they're not documents that are even sort of in the same realm, and then IDM Capture will still be able to process those.
What abilities does this app to make it stand out from your competitors? That's a great question. One of the examples is OnBase. So OnBase is more of a document management system, meaning it's designed to house documents and access documents. We are all about the processing of the documents. Now, IDM is about the management and the storage of those documents. So there's absolutely some overlap. But where we're strongest is frankly to partly due to what John just mentioned, where even if the system isn't quote unquote set up specifically for document types, it actually creates batch classes versus templates around document types, or using the AP example, specific vendors. So the setup is much more efficient. The AI system is much more powerful than many other solutions. And I just saw Debbie go off mute, so maybe she'd like to add some color.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So Infor works with MHC and on-base as well. If you're familiar with the AP invoice automation, what this IDM Capture does for us is extend it past invoice automation. So it allows us to do contract management, purchase orders, as John talked about, receipts, all kinds of documents that you can put in there, and then from document management, associate it to a given transaction. So competitively, we're stepping out of just invoice automation and going into allowing this functionality to be available across all your transactions.
Thank you, Debbie. And again, if you have additional questions related to that, feel free to chime in and ask a follow-up question. Let me see if I have anything else coming in. Here's a neat one. Does the system recognize handwriting? Not only does it recognize handwriting, but we've just launched a new version of the software that recognizes handwriting much better than your traditional OCR systems. To give an example, if you have a sentence written in a box, OCR has an impossible time reading that information. And our new engine has the ability to do very, very well with even sentences of information, scoring in the percentage of some 80+% accuracy rate. So again, even with handwritten documents or handwritten information, you can be confident that the majority of that information is correct, and making minor corrections will exponentially improve your processing times of those documents. At this point, that is what I have for questions. Let me just pause for another minute. All right. Well, I thank you all for your participation. As Alex mentioned, the Infor folks know just about everybody on this call. If you were just too shy to ask the question, by all means, reach out to Alex or his team, and they will engage us as needed. But it was an absolute pleasure having you all. Oh, wait. I have one more question that just came out. So I'm reading a question.
Take that
Hold on
one.
a second. Oh, okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah,
You're
sure.
already ahead of me.
So the question is, if you have multiple AP email addresses set up, would there be any manual intervention in using that as the import? The answer is no. Well, so you'll need to just basically point IDM Capture to those particular email addresses. That's a configuration step, but that's just one and done. After that, anytime emails come into those particular AP email addresses, IDM Capture would automatically see those emails come in, process them. We can process even the body of the email if you'd like, or just focus on the attachments. So, and we support more than one email address, so you can set up as many AP email addresses as you currently have in the system.
Great question. And I think that also answers your follow-up question. Yep, you're welcome. Okay. Another brief pause, since we actually did get a follow-up question. Okay, once again, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from everybody. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we will be happy to send both the recording and the PowerPoint to all that attended. And if other questions come up, again, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you all very much.
Thanks all.